Good day, everyone. I am Janine Marie Francisco, and I'm going to share with you my presentation about philosophy for children. So, our objectives will be divided into two parts. First, we'll be discussing Thomas Jackson's Homegrown Journal, and the second part will be all about Macayo and Miller's Philosopher's Pedagogy, all of which is taken from the educational perspective, different collection of journals from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. So let's try to answer the first question. Why should we teach philosophy to children? Are children already mentally prepared for philosophy, and will they be able to grasp all matters and information with regards to philosophy? To answer the question, in my own opinion, yes. We should be able to share philosophy to children because teaching children with philosophy makes a life of learning more accessible for them. In addition, it helps them to ask how they might better themselves and the world around them. So to better understand and appreciate what philosophy for children is, let's begin with our introduction of Thomas E. Jackson's Homegrown Journal. A short introduction of how philosophy for children began. This began in late 1960s when Matthew Lipman, while teaching philosophy to undergraduates at Columbia University, made a connection that had not really ever received much thought, and that is the idea that philosophy could be taught and indeed should be taught to children. Lipman also saw that his students had a lot of passion to change the world but were lacking in their ability to reason soundly and exercise good judgment in how to go about their lives. He also recognized that college was rather late in life to begin efforts to systematically develop reason and good judgment. That is also the same observation I have in mind. In our country, in the Philippines, it's very late that we are introduced with the subject philosophy. It's only in our college days that we have introduced philosophy as our subject. So because of this, Lipman thought of the solution that if discipline of philosophy is properly reconfigured, we may be able to present this at an earlier age. But it should be taught in a more accessible way. That is when Lipman started his first novel entitled Aristotle Mayer's Discovery. This particular novel allows the readers to discover in a playful way the rules of good thinking while at the same time learning to think together about some of the deep philosophical questions. And because of the achievement of Lipman, in the early 1970s, Lipman then moved to Montclair State College as Montclair University was already then known. He then joined with Anne Margaret Sharp in creating the Institute for the Advancement of Philosophy for Children, or the IAPC. The IAPC soon attracted a lot of international attention. Each year, scholars, mainly those connected with academic departments of philosophy, came for a 3-week workshop conducted by Lipman and Sharp. This workshop experience was an intense immersion in this new way of doing philosophy. And by the early 1980s, the IAPC have already developed a curriculum now referred to as the Philosophy for Children, or P4C curriculum, that has now consisted of 7 novels with 7 accompanying teaching manuals. Because of this accomplishment, Jackson have tried to use this particular curriculum to his grade schoolers, and these are just some of the assessments that he made. Okay, for the children, they were able to come up with their own questions on aspects of the text. Children were able to begin to inquire together into the question they had selected. They were animated, they were engaged and thoughtful, and they've even shared their personal views with each other and began to develop more penetrating insights into the question. Because of the success of P4C curriculum, we then still think of the question, how do we make this a lasting effect? In order to answer that, according to Thomas Jackson, we should be able to focus on depth, not on breadth, on sustained reform, not on quick fixes. So even on the success of P4C curriculum, we should not be able to expand it right away. Especially if schools haven't obtained yet the right conditions, meaning to say there is no support yet with regards to the principal or the faculty having committed the P4C in a long-term condition. Now, Let's talk about other factors that hinder change-lasting effect. First is the widespread notion that philosophy is a discipline unto itself with its own content and activities. Philosophy is a subject that is suitable only for adults and an activity best practiced by professors in university departments of philosophy. Jackson then referred to this as Big P philosophy. Lippmann novels represent an effort to break away from Big P philosophy, but their experience with Lippmann's program, even at the elementary level, revealed that his curriculum did not accomplish this end. And because of this, Jackson tried to develop a new approach which he called as Little P philosophy. The content of Little P philosophy is a set of beliefs that we all possess to make sense of the world. The activity of Little P philosophizing is a process of reflecting on these beliefs as part of our larger interactions with the world. And in important ways, the content of Little P philosophy is unique to each of us. It is a result of the particularities of what some philosophers refer to as our situatedness in the world and our responses to them. Socrates then referred to this as living an examined life. The little p and big P distinction has made it possible to view philosophy not primarily in terms of some specific content, but as a way of responding to content. Rather than immediately responding to content questions with an answer, little p philosophical activity invites us first to pause, inquire, and pose questions of the content itself. That is what we do best in our classroom. Instead of us asking questions for our students, we should be able to engage our students to ask questions themselves. In addition to the development of Jackson's little p philosophical advancement, he has now developed GTTK or Good Thinkers Toolkit. So this toolkit consists of 7 indicators for critical thinking. This particular toolkit has 7 tools, using the acronym RITEC to describe each of them. Each tool represents a type of philosophical question that can be used individually or in concert with others to take thinking about the initial starting point to a deeper level. So W for what do you mean by that? R for what are the reasons? A for what is being assumed or what can I assume? I for can I infer something from somewhere? Or where their inference is being made. T for is what is being said true and what does it imply if it is true. E, are there any examples to prove what is being said? And C, are there any counter-examples to disprove what is being said? Each letter or word stands for cognitive power tool to be used with discretion and care. Identifying, coming to a deeper understanding of each tool, we can be able to help our students turn passive reactive thinking into active proving and responsive good thinking. So with that, let's move forward now to the second part of our presentation, which will be all about the Philosopher's Pedagogy by Amber Strobakayo and Shad Miller. So these are just some of the common questions that Amber and Miller usually receive when they have started their P4C curriculum. So how come your students are so engaged? What makes a student experience in your classroom so different? And what is philosophy for children? To answer that, those were their statements. So philosophy for children, the heart of our teaching places a high value on inquiry. This experience is coupled with a strong desire to create an engaging and meaningful schooling experience for our students, provided the perfect context to bring together our interest in philosophy and teaching. So according to these philosophers, we should be able to engage our students in our classrooms teaching. We should be able to share to them, ask them to share with us the following questions they have in mind, because in that particular time, that's that time they discover the following learning things that they can have in the lesson that we have prepared. So how do we transform traditional classrooms into intellectual safe communities? To sustain commitment to improving our philosopher's pedagogy, we have developed a professional relationship where we continually dialogue, philosophize, test new activities, and critically reflect on the role that P4C Hawaii has in each of the classrooms. It is our contribution to the ongoing dialogue concerning philosophy for children and its relationship with philosophy, education, theory, and practice. So let's talk about the ongoing P4C dialogue. The professional dialogue fits into a much larger discussion that begins with the work of Matthew Lipman, the creator of the Philosophy for Children program. By adopting an innovative approach to philosophy and education, Lipman became known as the pioneer of the movement to assist classroom teachers in engaging their students in the activity of philosophical inquiry. So from the previous slides, we recall that what began in 1969 with a single philosophical novel called Aristotle Mayer's Discovery and an accompanying teacher manual, both designed to help children learn how to think for themselves, has now evolved into a K-12 program composed of 7 novels and a companion teacher manuals. This particular curriculum, however, Lipman has not been alone in that particular endeavor. For example, we start with Garrett Matthews. His approach to philosophy for children has aimed at modeling a distinct pedagogy. Matthews is known for encouraging adults to nourish children's thinking by inviting children to think with adults. By allowing children to take part in their thinking process of the community. In the case of the community, it may be considered their classroom or their family dinner, where members of the family discuss matters which attract the curiosity of children. If you are living together with small children at home, you might be observing why they keep on asking a lot of questions. Because children are really curious people. They try to ask a lot of questions because it's their way in finding answers for the world around them. So if I were you, you should be able to address all the concerns whenever they ask questions. Another philosopher is Thomas Wartenberg. He's created lessons and a 5-step plan to help teachers use children's book to bring philosophy into their classroom. I've shared here in the slides his book about big ideas for little kids. His plan to teach philosophy for children is through children's literature. Then again, going back to Jackson's conditions and practices, we recall that Jackson's P4C Hawaii provided him a more flexible approach than Lipman's original philosophy for children curriculum. Jackson's approach moves the focus of the classroom activity from philosophical content as represented in Lipman's novels and teacher manuals to the thoughts, ideas, and questions of the students, and this shift in focus from text to student allows teachers them to use P4C Hawaii to teach across all grade levels and within different content areas. From the beginning, Jackson already identified several limitations in Lipman's approach. Awareness of these issues has pushed Jackson and the teachers he works with to create a set of innovative instructional strategies that he can use effectively to bring the philosophy into the school classrooms. The philosopher's pedagogy is then built upon a reconceptualized of philosophy that fits more appropriately into the task of doing philosophy with children. We begin with Jackson's distinction between big P and little p philosophy. So this is a reconceptualized understanding of philosophy. In the earlier slides, we've already shared with you the difference between the two. But going back to what we have discussed, Big P philosophy again is directed to the mastery of an established canon and initiation into a domain of knowledge that is the preserve of the specialist. The activities associated with this conception of philosophy concern the maintenance, examination, critique, and presentation of ideas within the canon. So in short, Philosophy in the big P sort is familiar enough to anyone who has only taken a philosophy course at a university level. Unlike for little p philosophy, it means your natural ability for curiosity and wonder. We are said to be born with little p philosophers. Dewey writes that curious mind is constantly alert and exploring, seeking material for thought, and a vigorous body is on the qui vive for nutriment. Eagerness for experience for new and varied contexts is found where wonder is found. Little p philosophy is primarily our way of approaching and dealing with content in order to come to deeper understanding of it. This shift in perspective moves philosophy from canonical texts and the problems of philosophy to the activity of inquiry. Now, in adopting philosophers' pedagogy in our classrooms, we are going to discuss the educational commitments of the philosopher's pedagogy. This is also the last part of my presentation. So to begin with, we have to have an examined life of a teacher. What does that mean? According to Socrates, the examination of one's belief and conceptions of the world gives life's purpose. The content of the classroom, in addition to the methods of instruction, are the extension of the teacher's examined life outside the classroom. When our students observe us engaging in genuine inquiry about life's experiences, situations, products, and people, they are more willing to engage in the process of inquiry along with us. That is why whenever we use examples in our lessons that are real life or based on our life's experiences, we then observe that they become more engaged in their lessons or in the topic that we are discussing. So again, it all goes down to how we do our methods of instruction. If we keep on teaching without our own beliefs and conception to the matter, then the students themselves will also not be engaged to whatever we are discussing to them. Second, education as a shared activity between teacher and student. Teachers who practice the philosopher's pedagogy conceptualize education as a shared activity always between the teacher and a student. Sperry writes, through dialogue, the teacher of the students and the students of the teacher cease to exist and a new term emerges, student-teacher with student teachers. The teacher is no longer merely the one who teaches, but one who is himself taught in dialogue with the students, who in turn, while being taught, also teach. They become jointly responsible for a process in which all grow. So in this particular time, teachers can also learn from the student itself. So it's a two-way process. Okay? It's not always the teacher who gives information, but we should also engage our students to give information or to share information to the lessons that we are discussing. Third, content is the interaction between the participants' beliefs and experiences and subject matter. This is in a connection with our second commitment. The students are to bank all of the teacher's knowledge before they can properly enjoy the novel and understand its meaning. This is when we talk about our traditional approach. Students who are successful in the quizzes and tests are the ones who correctly supply the meanings and information that have been fed to them by the teacher. This is counter to the manner in which the philosopher's pedagogy views the teaching of literature and other content matter. In short, when talking about traditional approach, the teacher remains to be the expert, while the student lose their opportunity for them to think and reason out. Why? Because it's only the teacher who gives or feeds information to the student. But then again, going back to our second commitment, we should be able to give chance for the students to reason out, to share their ideas and insights on the lesson that we are sharing. So what does it mean to teach a subject using the philosopher's pedagogy? The primary content, which is the same regardless of the school subject or grade level, is composed of the beliefs and conceptions of the world that shape our little p philosophy. The texts are still very much relevant and are used as the catalyst to initiate meaningful philosophical inquiry. The sensitive receptivity of the teacher towards the beliefs of the students provides the incentive to engage the text and to begin a conversation about their meaning. The ideas also of the students are to be considered, to be heard, and tested by all members of the classroom community through an ongoing dialogue. The central focus of the pedagogy is to engage students and the teacher in an activity of philosophy born out of the questions and curiosities that emerge from their engagement with the respective content of each course. The craft of philosophy contains itself a pedagogy, the need for dialogue, the need for questioning, and a method of inquiry, which are essential characteristics of education in general. This is why education cannot be divorced from philosophy and philosophy cannot be divorced from education. So again, we should always consider our students ongoing dialogue, meaning to say we should engage them and we should always try to invite them to pose questions and share their insights and feelings. Fourth, philosophy as a general theory of education. Good teachers develop a theory or philosophy of education that centers their work and clarifies their actions and judgments in the classroom. A teacher's theory of education provides a foundation for their practice that rests upon and directs the myriad of decisions relating to teaching. One's teaching philosophy, therefore, directly influences curriculum design and implementation, the physical structure of the classroom, and how to artfully respond to an unexpected comment made by the student. So in this particular slide, we then support philosophy as a general theory of education, conceptualizing schools as a place where human beings who have thoughts, they have feelings, cultures, and experiences come to engage in personally meaningful learning. Education in this sense is not about test scores, performance indicators, mechanical teaching, standardization, centralization, and scientific policy rationales. We denounce teaching that reduces students to just another commodity in the marketplace. Instead, the philosopher's pedagogy concerns the shaping and developing of character as a means to improve the overall well-being of society. So this is also what we've been trying to do with regards to our students. It's not all about their academic grades, as we've keep on reminding them. It's shaping, developing their thinking skills, and most importantly, their characters. Okay, Joey noted that such pedagogical commitment makes a fundamental connection between education and philosophy. Fifth, philosophy as a living classroom practice. Due to a variety of pressures, both internal and external, the typical classroom teacher does not appear to have time for children's genuine wondering and questioning from which structured inquiries can grow. We know that many teachers believe in the importance of students' wonderment and questions. So it takes creativity, knowledge of subject matter, and understanding of human development and the willingness to experiment, reflect, and try again. Philosophy as a general theory of education does not simply require teachers to think of philosophy as an important part of teaching. Rather, teachers must also make philosophy a living classroom practice. So, among the most important and frequently used as a concept of intellectual safety and strategies, we have here two ideas or two developments. One is the GTTK, the one that we've mentioned from Jackson's program, and the second one is plain vanilla. Plain vanilla suggests Jackson suggests plain vanilla format where students generate questions vote on the question they want to talk about and use a set of assessment criteria to judge the progress of their community, intellectual safety, listening participation, inquiry, learning something new, scratching beneath the surface of a topic, remaining focused, or anything more. So in this particular time, plain vanilla na format or development wants students to generate their own questions. They are the ones to think of the questions that they would like to ask their classmates or their teachers with regards to the text that they have read. And again, the Right Tech or the GTTK, the Thinkers Toolkit, is addressed for us to use to be used whenever we try to answer any philosophical questions in a subject or in a lesson. This is the last part of my presentation, and this is all about how to the last part is about challenging contemporary measures for classroom assessment. Finally, the philosopher's pedagogy requires the teachers to rethink contemporary measures for classroom assessment. In order to aid in positive transformation of today's schools, the philosopher's pedagogy is not a top-down model of education reform. It is a grassroots movement that begins with teachers and students working together to fundamentally change what happens in classroom. This movement directly addresses and constantly keeps in mind the central question that is often ignored or missing during today's educational policy discussion. What is best for your students? So this will always depend on the culture and the tradition that we have been in the place that we are living with. So to end this, we should start by making both our teachers and students accountable for the development of the progression. We should think of the methods to be used to arrive at the conclusions and recognize that when students thoughtfully engage in inquiry, it then reveals how complicated a question or topic really is. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for watching.